Welcome back to today's episode of Useful Knowledge. Today we'll be looking at romance and love, but in specific the idea of a doomed romance, a forbidden and failed love. This topic is near and dear to my heart, and so it should be with all of you. As over the years, humanity has shown great interest into the topic of romance, as is proven to be a core aspect of our human identity. It is what makes us, us. And even further interest into the concept of a doomed romance. Doomed romantic narratives contribute to both past and present day eras, as they provide powerful depictions of contextual values through literature provided to the reader that capture and sustains our interest in the external and internal forces that evidently make or break human connections. Today, we'll be looking at three species that will assist us in gaining a wider understanding into the topic of doomed romances. Now, without any further ado, let's get right into it. This is one of the Robert Browning families. Robert Browning was a poet during the Victorian era, challenged social ideologies amid a time of classified materialism and sexual double standards. My Last Duchess was one of my favourites. Written in 1882, known to be a dramatic monologue, it is set in the past and clearly demonstrates the prominent themes and values of a Victorian society. Through the doomed romantic genre, Browning presents this dramatic monologue as he adopts the persona of a duke obsessed with perfection and strict loyalty. In the Victorian era, the woman in marriage became the property of a man, and this is highlighted instantly in the title My Last Duchess, where the use of personal pronouns exposed the pure possession the duke acquires. This also suggests that there have been past duchesses establishing even more barbarity and perhaps evil within his character. My Last Duchess also features a romance forsaken by insecure, misogynist male trope. His manipulative state of mind is conveyed at the very beginning in his opening statements. That peace I wonder now. For Pando's hand were busily at day, and there she stands. He then continues to say, how such a glance came there, so not the first. Not only does this show the Duke's suspicion of his Duchess's loyalty, but it hints at an affair with a painter, which seems biased and outrageous, as the painter's name translates to friar, which has religious connotations. Other factors such as smug asides and obnoxious remarks cause him to appear condescending and disingenuous. My Last Duchess reveals social inequalities, including the gender imbalance, sexism, and power surge, which depicted doomed romances that reflected the prevailing ideologies of Victorian societies, and simultaneously critiquing the stereotypical treatment of women. Browning's poetry explores various connections between individuals that knew the cultural and historical value of Victorian ages, writing about superficial issues related to men's treatment of women. In contrast, the verse novel by Brian Conahan's Week and Sarah Crossan's We Come Apart explores the contemporary context of Brexit Britain. Facing severe issues of racism, domestic abuse, and xenophobia, the novel delves into the topic of doomed romances by allowing us to explore the romance of two young teenagers separated not by one character, but rather by the society they live in and the social expectations surrounding them. The novel is written through the perspective of dual narratives, which allows the author to convey and project each character's hardships and struggles. The novel is written in the first person, but also written in free verse, which is a technique without rhyme. This inevitably provokes a more natural speech-like rhythm. There are multiple sentences which portray this style, creating a sense of urgency, which is a common trope in the doomed romance narrative. The author's use of language choices contrasts the different social classes the characters fall into. My hair clothes, skin, shoes is differing from people. Niku's poor grasp of the English language is seen throughout the novel, and it highlights the racism and discrimination Niku faces, and isolation he feels as a result. We Come Apart seems to communicate the impact of racism and domestic violence on the lives of young people in today's culture and society. The author's use of various literacy advices and techniques allows these issues to be explored, exposing the audience to the various external and internal forces in a doomed romantic narrative. The story of two males romantically in love, Call Me By Your Name, takes us on an emotional journey through the modern-day hardships that come with a relationship. The director Luca Guadagnino positions us, the audience, in a way in which we are constantly attached to the main character. Through his camera styles, Guadagnino visually makes us feel what Eli does, and he won't let us escape, especially during the uncomfortable parts. This allows us to experience the raw emotions the characters go through, which inevitably allows us to connect and relate to the film. The movie is shot using only one 35mm lens, and the limitation of not switching lenses imitates the human eye, so the storytelling is never relying on fancy camera techniques to make us feel.
It's one lens. I wanted simplicity, I wanted to be
The consistent
straightforward.
camera visually pins us in the place of one person who is present, and this choice subtly builds a very strong emotional impact. For example, the film ends with a long shot of Eli staring into a fire and crying as he feels his pain, so do we. And so Guadagnino chooses to not cut away, making us feel his pain for a long time. It opens us to a cold realization that evidently this romance was doomed from the start. And so it takes us back to the fact that our doomed romance reflects more than just our everlasting literary fascination with love, but instead our desire to explore and comprehend the internal and external forces that evidently make us human. My name is Zain Jassem, and this has been Useful Knowledge. See you next time.